chapter 16, and then I'm gonna go over the results that you should be getting to help you what you're gonna do for this week's lab, and the new stuff as well, okay? So chapter 15 is on microbial mechanisms of pathogenicity, and pathogenicity is the ability of a pathogen to cause disease by overcoming the host defenses. And that depends on several things. Depends on if that organism is able to invade the host and multiply within the host, and the ability to avoid being damaged or detected by the host defenses. So a pathogen is a microbe or a virus that is able to produce disease. Virulence refers to the intensity of the disease being produced by the pathogen. So when we say virulence, it's kind of the degree of pathogenicity. So virulent organisms usually produce a violent, severe disease, and oftentimes that can lead to death. So when we're talking about diseases like chickenpox and the common cold, those pathogens are not considered to be virulent. They aren't going to kill you, usually. And diseases like bubonic plague, that is, the pathogen that causes that is Yersinia pestis. And the Ebola virus that causes Ebola, those are considered virulent pathogens. And it was, I believe, last year that we had all those outbreaks with the Ebola virus. So if you listen to the news, you're listening to a lot of people were dying from that. And today, even still in Africa, a lot of people died from Ebola. And why it got so much notoriety here is because some of those workers came from here and then they came back to be treated. So how do microbes become established inside of a host? Step one would be it needs a portal of entry. It needs some way that it can establish itself on the host or inside of the host. And one way that it can get into the host is through mucous membrane. And mucous membranes line the conjunctiva of the eyes and the respiratory tract, the gastrointestinal tract, the urogenital tract. Those are all lined by mucous membrane. So here's a test question. The respiratory tract is the easiest and most frequently used route of pathogens to get into the body. That's number one. So examples of few of the diseases that are transmitted that way are the cold virus, pneumonia, tuberculosis, influenza. But when you come to, here's a couple others, but you pretty much could, knowing the symptoms and what's happening with you with those diseases, you would think that it's going to come in your respiratory tract. But the measles and smallpox, which show up on your skin, those also come in through the respiratory tract. Organisms that come in through that respiratory tract, that come in on inhaled air, on dust particles, or in airborne droplets. So an example of a few of those, and I'm just telling you these things to get you used to now knowing, you know, you should, whenever you hear of diseases that are in the news, you should look it up to see at least what type of organism it is. Know what is a bacterial infection or a viral infection or something like that. So for bacterial infection coming in through the respiratory tract, we already said tuberculosis, and whooping cough as well, that comes in that way. For the viruses, it's the common cold, measles, fungal diseases, Those two fungal diseases that we've talked about, histoplasmosis and coccidioides. Coccidioides is the one that my sister got by inhaling fungal spores on dust particles. Protozoans would be toxoplasmosis. Those are just examples. Second avenue that is lined with mucous membranes that is a portal of entry is the gastrointestinal tract. So the respiratory tract is number one, but those two together make up usually the ways that most of the pathogens come in. Pathogens do come in other ways, but most of them are coming in either through the respiratory tract or the gastrointestinal tract. And it gets contacted through infected food or water, or you may have it on your hands in your mouth. And even as adults, I mean, we know kids put their hands in their mouth, but I bite my hangnails without even, well, I do think about it. Shouldn't do this. I do it anyway. Stuff that comes in through your mouth, most is destroyed by your stomach acids and enzymes, or if it gets down to the small intestines, through the intestinal bile or the intestinal enzyme. So examples of diseases that come in through the gastrointestinal tract are polio, hepatitis A, typhoid fever, amoebic dysentery, shigellosis, and cholera. Those all get transmitted through the GI tract. So pathogens have to have a portal of entry to get into your body to cause disease, but they also have to have a portal of exit. And that's to allow them to go out and find a new host so that they can keep infecting. They wouldn't be around very long if they only infected one person and stayed there. So with the gastrointestinal type organisms, usually one of the portals of exit is through the feces, coming out that way. Genital urinary tract. Some pathogens that cause STDs, that's sexually transmitted diseases, can penetrate unbroken mucous membranes, but usually, pathogens come in where there's an abrasion or cut, and that's how they get in. So some of those STDs that come in through the genital urinary tract is the HIV infection, genital warts, chlamydia, herpes, syphilis, gonorrhea. Syphilis is one. Syphilis is one that can come through. That pathogen, treponema, can come through unbroken mucous membranes. So those were the different types of mucous membranes that organisms come through. The second type of portal of entry is the skin. And most microbes can't penetrate unbroken skin. But they can come in through the openings on the skin, such as your hair follicles or your sweat ducts. Fungus can grow in the keratin on the skin and infect the skin and nails. Exception to being able to come in through unbroken skin. We talked about last week about the hookworms. So the eggs come out into the soil, hatch up into larvae, and then if you go walking around barefoot, they can bore through your skin and get in. And the third way is through the parenteral route. This is direct deposit beneath the skin or mucous membranes. So microbes are entering usually due to trauma. You have insects, arthropods that bite you, then it's an injection. They bite you and put the pathogen in you. It can come in through puncture wounds. That's the way spores of Clostridium tetani can come in, and then those spores can germinate and cause the disease tetanus. They're going to have the bacteria multiply and it produces a toxin. Come in through bites, cuts, wounds, surgery, can even come in if you have dry skin, and you know how your dry skin kind of gets abraded, come in that way as well. And so these pathogens that come in through a portal of entry, they need to come in through their preferred portal of entry to cause their disease. So an example of that is when they came up with a vaccination. When you get a vaccination against smallpox, which we don't do anymore, but we used to, they would use a little thing with prongs on it that they stuck in your arm, and they would inject the part of the virus in there to cause you to have a reaction, and your body would build antibodies against that particular virus. And so it needs to go in to cause the disease. You need to inhale the pathogen, but when it comes through your skin, it caused a slight reaction, you know, you might have a little slight something going on there, like bumps or something, and enough to have your immune system start making antibodies against that virus, rather than giving you the disease. So they need to come in the preferred portal to cause disease. Okay, so we already said they need a portal of exit to get out. And in some cases, the portal of exit relates to the portal of entry, like with your respiratory. If you're taking it in through your nose, then those pathogens may be coming out to cause more disease to somebody else who's sneezing or coughing, that route. Gastrointestinal, it can come out through the mouth too, because you could throw up, but it's also coming out the other end. And pathogens from the genital urinary tract exit through the secretions of the penis and the vagina. Go in that way, and then they exit that way. Skin and wounds, directly, or if you have wounds, you can transmit that directly by somebody touching your wound, or by contaminated fomites. And a fomite is an inanimate object, such as a glass or a hypodermic needle or a towel or doorknob, something like that. So the ability of a pathogen to establish an infection and disease usually depends upon the infectious dose, which is the number of microbes that is taken into the body. So a measure of virulence is called the ID50. That means infectious, we're talking about infectious dose. That is the number of microbes it takes to infect 50% of a sample population. So in cutaneous anthrax, ID50 is 10 to 50 endospores.